When we've got a situation where nuclear plants or gas plants can't be cooled, obviously they need to be cooled in order to remain safe, because they can get quite hot, but also they need to remain cool in order to be very efficient and very effective at creating the power. So in Romania and in Hungary as well, they're looking at new ways that they can divert or get more water into the areas where they need it so that these power plants can remain cool. Much of Europe, through having these periods of extreme heat and also drought, is seeing their river levels be really, really low, much lower than usual. And that creates problems for cooling down both nuclear power plants, but also gas power plants, because there's simply not enough water there to cool down the plants that they need to. And not only is there simply not enough water, but the water temperatures are high as well. And that means it's harder for them to cool. So they're having to take quite extreme measures, things they don't normally have to do to try and get these power plants to keep operating. In Hungary, there has been a big impact on some of its nuclear power plants, one in particular, which generates a large amount of the country's electricity. And they were hoping and praying for more rain so that the water levels would rise. And I think luckily they've been able to get some more water and it has continued operating. But they were in a situation where it was quite touch and go whether they would get that, and they were preparing for the worst. They were reducing output from the power plant. They were saying that the country needs to come together. Big factories might need to reduce their output, but also households might need to reduce their output so that they can keep the lights on, essentially. And this is all coming from extreme heat, from drought, which we know is being made worse by climate change. Well, when we have a situation where nuclear plants or gas plants have to completely turn off or reduce their power output in order to stay safe, that does have knock-on impacts across the whole economy in the whole country, but also on people's general day-to-day life. So we can have factories that have to stop working, stop producing. We have commercial premises that can't be cooled down or their operations can't continue as normal. But also we have households without power, and that can be a threat to life if somebody needs medical help from equipment, or generally elderly people who can't see where they're going and there's a risk to them falling downstairs and whatnot. And unfortunately, we have seen deaths in heat wave related blackouts before. In the US in 2020, and in Spain and Portugal, when there was a blackout, I think it was last year, there was also death. So we know that blackouts have consequences. When a nuclear plant does shut down, it's very safe to do so. They have proper policies and procedures to make sure that they can do that safely, and also to reduce output. It is quite safe to do so. It's more the knock-on impacts of what it have on the rest of the economy. If they have to reduce power output or turn off, then that could cause rolling blackouts across the country too. So there is going to be probably a worry about those flash floods, and the government and emergency services will have to be preparing for that. But I think in the longer term, it's good news that we're getting some rain because that hopefully will bring river levels and sea levels back up, and make it a bit easier to cool the power plants. I think when it comes to different power sources, we do have to think about the longer term implications. Obviously, nuclear is seen as a very reliable power source normally. And with extreme heat, we are going to have to think about that a little bit more and make sure that there's management in place for if there's a drought or extreme temperatures. We've obviously got gas still on the system across much of Europe as well, and that gets much less efficient during heat. And you've got things like solar and wind, which can also be impacted by extreme weather, and get less efficient as well. So there's a lot more planning that might need to be involved now, regardless of the power source. There's not one power source that's immune from this. Each of them have different challenges that they face. And so governments getting ahead of that will be really important.
Balra lehet. Ez a fél is, hogy a